we have the three candidates that are running for David Linsky's seat, state rep. We have Connor Deegan from Hopkinton, James Arena DeRosa from Holliston, and Lauren Barnes from Millis. So what we're going to do is we're going to have them do a 3-minute introduction, and then we're going to do a series of questions, and then we'll do a closing, and then they're going to mingle. So if you have specific questions that you would like to talk to them about, you are more than welcome. And hopefully the technology will work as well. So I'm Sue Kelleher. I'm with the Sherborn Council on Aging. I'm the director, and this is the assistant director, Christina. And she's going to be the timekeeper, and I'm going to be the question asker. So you have to give us some slack, because we're pretty new at this, and we don't really know what we're doing. So.
And also, we shut the air off because it was very noisy, but if it gets too warm, just like raise your hand and
then we'll
turn it back on.
All right, so we'll start with Lauren to introduce herself and go from there.
Well, thank you so much for everybody here, including the behind-the-scenes players, because they're the ones that make the magic happen, right? So thank you to our friendly videographer. I'm Lauren Barnes, and yes, you have seen me at CNL Frosty getting a line Ricky, so I just want to confess. I've actually lived in Millis for over 30 years, and my kids went through public schools, and I grew up in Needham, and I'm a product of the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. And I'm one of these people that has always been involved. I get that gene from both of my parents, who were very involved in all facets of the Needham community, and that's something that they passed on, both as an ethical responsibility, really, to be involved in one's community. So I served most recently as an elected member of our select board. I was the chair during COVID, so that was quite a lot of responsibility to get businesses back on their feet, and that was a big priority for me because I'm the only business person seated before you. That's really my strong suit. My career comes from business, and from there I have applied those skills to improving performance of organizations to include federal, state, and municipal government. I am also the only grandmother in this race. I have 7 of those, and that's really the most fun. So I know I'm seated with a lot of there's a lot of camaraderie in this room on that front. I hold the highest credential in my profession, which is public relations. Nationally, I've also been recognized nationally, to include by the White House, for the effectiveness of my work. And I feel that fundamentally communications is really the last mile of service to anybody of all ages in a community. And so when I looked at the situation at hand and what has been coming forth to taxpayers, myself, all of us included, I am a senior, I said, you know, I really can't stand by, and that's been my MO from day one. And my feeling is, from my own parents, I have a lot of experience with this. I have my mother here. I'm very fortunate. My dad's 87, my mom is, am I allowed to say?
You can say it.
My mom is 86, and I'm very grateful for that. But I also, through that, this is a very personal conversation for me, because there isn't a facet of senior living that I don't think hasn't touched my family. And so I'm really excited to be here, because I have a lot of new ideas, and that's really what a private sector person does, is they bring new ideas to the table. And so I'm excited to have a conversation with you, and I just will say that if there's any conversation or question that I haven't answered, I'm very accessible, so feel free to grab a card and give me a call. Thank you so much.
James?
Well, thank you all for the opportunity. I'm delighted to be with you this morning. Thank you to the council and all of you for putting this event together. Great to be back in this room. I taught in the Lifetime Learning Program in Sherborn, and I recognize some familiar faces, so it's great to be here. My name is James Arena DeRosa. I live next door in Holliston. I've spent my career and life helping people meet their basic needs, and also making sure that the voices of the community are heard in the corridors of power. I grew up in an activist home, was inspired by my mom. We had all kinds of activities in our community. She's 98, and she still rails against Trump and complains when the Red Sox make a mistake, so she's doing pretty well. But I was trained by the United Farm Workers in community organizing, learned a lot of lessons from them. I worked at Oxfam America. I was the lead advocate before Congress, the White House, and state legislatures. I was asked to lead Peace Corps here in New England, wonderful organization I still have great affection for. The Obama administration chose me to lead USDA Food and Nutrition here in the Northeast United States. I oversaw a $12 billion budget that served 20 million Americans. And the thing about food security, it's so foundational for so much of our lives. I had the opportunity to work with farmers, with agriculturalists, environmentalists, because it's about land use, water use, but then you also work with educators, I work with healthcare professionals. It really gave me broad experience in a number of areas. I don't posit myself as an expert in any one particular area, but I do think I have outstanding broad experience that would be invaluable if I am your next state representative. And as much as I'm proud of the work that I've done at the state and national level, I've always been a person of the community. I served on my finance committee in Holliston. I was chair of my local Democratic Party. My wife, Rena DeRosa, who you may know, ran the senior center in Holliston for years. There used to be trips that they did with Sherborn. She still does that over in Westwood. I coached baseball. I was a volunteer for the arts and music program. When the town needed a new town administrator, they asked me to be on the search committee. I know you guys are going through that now in Sherborn, which is a big decision for this town to make. As far as the role, there's really three roles that I see for state rep. First and foremost, you are the lead advocate that partners with leaders in the community to bring issues that are playing out at the Beacon Hill level that affect here, the town of Sherborn. Second, as a state legislator, you make state policy. And right now, we're under assault by the right wing in this country, and they're coming at us on so many issues. We need to stand strong. And third, as Dave Linsky told me, you are that one person in government that helps the local residents navigate the bureaucracy. I plan to be accessible, available full-time for the residents of Sherborn if I'm elected your state representative. Thank you again. Happy to be here.
Thank you, James. Connor?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Connor Deegan. I live in Hopkinton, where I grew up. I went to public schools there, K through 12, and I decided when I was done with that, after going to college and studying political science and government, I decided to go and eventually settle back in my hometown. And there I first got my start in local government by running a write-in campaign from the local housing authority, where I was able to try to serve as an advocate for those who were in public housing, primarily in seniors, and those with disabilities. Through that, I grew very close with many seniors in my community and became an advocate for their issues. When my town clerk retired, I ran for her position, and I have to say, that was in 2016. It's been the ride of a lifetime on that one. We saw so much change and had to adapt to so much in that time frame, through the first implementations of early voting to the crazed political division that we saw following 2016 and leading onward. And at the same time, I took my role a little further and tried to see how I could find ways to build bridges where I kept seeing walls go up. And so what I did was I actively tried to work with marginalized parts of the community, including some ethnic minorities that had recently been moving into town, to try to bring them closer. We worked on a project called Get to Know Your Muslim Neighbor, where we had coffee and donuts, town hall, and had a chance to actually just meet folks from the local mosque that was nearby. We then were able to go and celebrate the Martin Luther King Day celebration at that mosque, where I've been a guest speaker for the past 7 years now. It's been a lovely experience to be able to do that, and then also to take that as a chance, as the only elected individual who's in town hall full-time, to become an advocate for residents who are trying to navigate government. And I hear all the time, you can't fight town hall, and so I decided to be the one that was going to fight on town hall on behalf of residents. And so whenever someone came into an issue, they knew and they were told by others who had dealt with similar issues, go talk to Connor and he'll help you figure it out. It might not be in my department at all, but I was 2 doors down from the person who was going to be able to solve the problem, and I'd go and I'd walk right into their office and I'd solve it. So now the goal that I have here is to take that experience and expand it to support all of you. I am focused on municipal service because of my own municipal service over the past 7 years. I have seen how state law can negatively impact small communities, and I've seen how we have to deal with unfunded mandates and try to find ways to pay for them. Thank you very much for taking the time today. I'd really love to speak with you more, hopefully, as we go through and talk to you more about my experience as well.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll switch it up and I'll have Connor go first, then Lauren, and then James. So the first question is, which you've sort of alluded to, all of you. Why have you chosen to run for this position, and what special attributes do you bring to the table?
I think that for me, what I'm looking to bring to the table is a fresh perspective. I am only 7 years in government, but I've seen what's wrong with it in that time. I've seen things that come down to communities that negatively impact it. I've worked directly on municipal budgets and seen this is the way that the state law might actually impact, even if they didn't see it when they were writing the law. I want to be able to take that lens and also take my community-focused approach to government. I always had an idea of putting community and customer first when I've done my own job now, and I want to continue to do that because I'm your advocate in this position. I'd be your advocate at the State House and in the community, being someone who can also speak to power within the community when you have troubles and are trying to navigate red tape throughout. So that would be what I would hope to bring to the table on that.
Thank you. Lauren?
I look at this as I'm a customer just like all of us. I'm a taxpayer just like all of us. And our government, we pay our government to do work for us. And the attributes that I bring to the table are when people say something can't be done, I'm the person who proves them wrong. I'm the person who brought the Commonwealth their first ever real-time performance contract at the state level so that vendors could be better managed for the taxpayer benefit. I'm the person that introduced in my town the first ever performance-based contract for managers, and that had never been done before, so that you weren't just getting automatic raises. There were metrics, performance metrics that were taxpayer focused, so that there was a reason why people were getting raises and incentivized to do them. And I'm the person that launched commuter rail service, for example, down to Gillette on a taxpayer budget of $0. And it's still in place today. So I'm the person that defies a lot of what people say can't be done, and I'm very sensitive to the fact that it's our checkbooks to make things happen.
Thank you. James?
Sure. Well, first, I believe I have the passion and energy to make a difference. I will bring that every day into this position if I'm fortunate enough to be elected. But I believe that as much as I have experience and I'm comfortable in the corridors of power, and I've worked with governors, with legislators, with executive officers, I've been there, I've already been involved. I'm a person of the community that will be able to take issues that affect the town of Sherborn and bring those into those conversations. I'll give you a specific example. The MBTA Communities Act. When you read through it, some of you are shaking your heads, you know what I'm talking about. And as soon as I read through it, I was like, oh, nobody from a small town was at the table when that was decided. No consideration for something like Sherborn, a town with no town water, no town sewers. Now, we've made a little progress with all the pushback. I don't know if anybody read the Globe this morning, so there's been some progress on that. But too many times things are decided at the state level without a consideration from local towns. If I could do one thing in my service as state representative, it would be to insist that when laws are passed, when rules are promulgated, that they're taking into consideration a small town perspective. I've done that my whole life. I've worked for the communities that their voices have a place as decisions are being made.
All right, James, so you must have looked at my notes, because the next question, you're going to go first, Connor, and then Lauren.
Sure.
But so what is your position on the MTA impact bill?
But, you know, it was a blunt instrument with good intentions that the Baker administration rushed at the last minute. Now they're trying to recover because they got so much blowback from it. And I don't know if people know this. There was nothing in the rules that required affordable housing. That's not part of it. So that was the other problem with it. It didn't really get there. It would help with housing stock. But you know, here in Sherborn, it would have put so many units, 750 units in a town with 1,600. It was just great. They just didn't read it through. It was a one-size-fits-all, typical unfunded mandate coming from the state government. We need to do a better job with that, and depending on the questions, I have other examples where we could change how things are looked at. Here we are, these small towns, they're all a little bit different in size, but face some similar issues.
Thank you. Connor?
Thank you for the question. I would say, I think that, I'll give credit, James hit it on the head, that one of the biggest issues that we face, especially in communities of our varying sizes, but all generally smaller towns, is we run into that there are one-size-fits-all solutions that come from the state, and then we deal with unfunded mandates, unintended consequences, things that work really well for large communities, work really well for the cities like Framingham, but do not work for our towns. And we continue to see this with everything from the MBTA, where it affects housing, and we then have a cart before the horse moment. We're stuck with, if we want to try to even include affordable housing, then we have to try to hook up water, and then we can't hook up the water because they want us to have the housing in as well. And at this point, you know, especially with this drought, we're looking at more and more reasons why we need to build water resiliency as well. We need to make sure that we get water into communities so that they're prepared for emergencies like this, where we have great shortages, people are draining their wells. So I think that there needs to be more consideration done for the smaller communities, especially those who are on wells and don't have a backup source.
Take advantage of this. I really have to thank my colleagues for answering this question for me, because they're totally right. Right now, our legislature is one voice. The right people are not at the table, there is no balance, so therefore there is no pushback. What is coming at us like a tsunami are a series of unfunded mandates, while our state legislature holds a record surplus. And so somebody like me comes to the table and says, just a minute. These are great ideas in concept, right? We're trying to diversify and create access through housing. We're trying to improve and protect water quality, some basic fundamental things. But nowhere is the checkbook being presented to our towns, and it's breaking our towns. And so our towns want to be able to make decisions like what we're going to do with our schools, like how we're going to support seniors, and all these other services, but we can't now, because our legislature is one voice. The reason that I'm running against all odds is because we need somebody who's willing to stand up and be the balance and be the other voice and say, no, we're not just going to do unfunded mandates without checks and balances. We're not just going to do all these policies that come at us, these one-size-fits-all, because we don't have contrarian and complementary voices at the table. We didn't have the right people at the table for this MBTA redistricting, and everybody knows that. It came at us, you know, like a freight train, and we need somebody who pushes back. And I'm the person who has that experience, and I'm the person who will do that.
Thank you. All right, Lauren, you're going to go first, then James, then Connor. What have you learned about Sherborn's character, problems, and/or opportunities?
Well, I would say opportunities first. I would say, first of all, it feels very familiar to me, so I would say one of the things that certainly is fabulous is its commitment to outdoor space. I mean, it's just beautiful here. I walk trails here all the time. It's very bucolic, and I think a lot of sensitivity has been given to growth, how things are zoned, how they're planned. There's a lot of conversation. I know some of the people who lead some of these conversations on different boards and committees. So bravo to you to not just saying, okay, we're just going to lay down and become a city really that we don't want to be. So growth in your population has been very controlled, and protection of your natural resources has been very controlled. I think I'm looking at the room for the opportunity, which is all of our towns in our district. The greatest growth of population is right here before us. It's our over 60. And so to the extent we can better serve our over 60 population, I know there's a lot of ideas in this room. I know I'm bubbling with ideas too, and I think now we have to look at writing some checks for those ideas. And we can do that if we get some of the money out of the surplus that's sitting in the State House, and instead those monies have to be diverted to supporting these other unfunded mandates. And the people that always lose in my history, both as a resident, as a mother, as an elected official, and now as a candidate, the people in my mind that lose continuously are always the seniors. So I'm looking forward to changing that narrative.
James?
Sure. So great question, and I've enjoyed talking with many Sherborn residents over the past several months. I think people are proud of the character of this town and what it represents, but there certainly are some challenges ahead as well. One of the things I've picked up from a number of seniors is affordability. It's getting very expensive, the taxes are getting high. And when I first saw this huge surplus that the state had, my first reaction was, sure, we all want tax relief, but why not more money to the towns so that they can keep local taxes lower? I think development and land use, I mean, I've seen from the sky pictures of Sherborn, and it's like this green oasis, so kudos to all of you for preserving that character of the town over the years, but there's a cost to that as well, and I think as the town faces the future, it's going to have to decide things around water, around sewers, local sewers, if any, and how to do development. But the other thing that's happening is this town sits on a pathway. I'll give you another specific example. I sat with Sean, your DPW director, and he says, James, he says, we get treated like a small town out in Western Mass with our road money, our Chapter 90 road money. Because you would think, common sense would say that when we think about traffic, and people are concerned about traffic in these towns, transportation, 80,000 cars a day come through this town. Happens to the other towns in this whole district. But road usage is not in the formula for how much money the state gives the small town. So we're like a small town out in Western Mass, right? They only take into consideration the roadways and the number of people living in the town. Doesn't make sense. Too many times, small towns are not taken into consideration in the way the state makes its rules and makes its laws. So I really enjoyed talking with people. There's some great things going on, outstanding schools in this town. People want to preserve the character, but it has to be done in a way that makes sense. And that's a challenge for many of the towns in this area.
Connor?
Thank you. So my wife is a restaurant manager, and she actually got her start in the industry working over at the Heritage. That was her first spot, and that was kind of the first time that we were spending a lot more time in Sherborn, and we ended up making some really good friends with the Walshes, Janet's son Connor, and Chucky Blaney's grandson, and we got a chance to talk with them over the years about what was important with Sherborn, how it was a small town, and I remember even just going to the local caucus and talking with those who are stepping up to do government service in the community, and the character comes from the people who are there, the people who are here in this room. You all give your heart and soul to this town, and it shows. I think there's definitely issues when it comes to development that we need to look at. We need to make sure that state money isn't ignoring smaller communities as well. But we also need to make sure that the state's better planning for how that money works. So we're talking about unfunded mandates, we're talking about how these things impact our communities and how different people are influencing that in Boston right now. I can say when I was attending a citizens legislative seminar that I was invited to by our Senate president, I asked the question when we were talking about bills and certain unfunded mandates, well, how do you plan into this when we need to make sure that we're not going to have a negative impact on the communities? And I won't name any names. I will just say it was actually ended up being a Republican senator who said to me, we don't actually do that. What we do is we wait until it's budget time. And I saw that was a consistent piece that was on Beacon Hill, is they wait until the budget, they pass all the laws, and then they say, we'll deal with it later. I've seen some really great proposals to actually have an impact office that is required to review bills, and I think that would be something that would be very important to the benefit of our communities as well.
So, Connor, Loring, and James next. So, what are your plans for serving Sherborn residents, and how will you show your commitment to constituents?
So, for me, it's trying to make sure that I'm there and I'm available. I've done it in Hopkinton where I make sure to always be available out in the community. I go to community events, and I'm more than happy for people to approach me and ask me about anything relating to government at those. That's part of the job. And I want people to feel comfortable approaching me on any issue, whether it's something severe going on in their lives or whether it's just a minor bit of red tape that they want to deal with in government. I am someone who I want to be as connected as I can by coming, making myself available, and by also watching and seeing how things are working out in your government. That's why I was watching all the interviews for your town administrator position when you were going through that. Congratulations on the new hire. Hopefully that one works out. And you know, it's always hard to tell with those because you always hope then as well that those are going to fit the character of your town. But my goal will be to continue to connect with you. You'll find that on my website I put my phone number on there. I respond to all my own emails. I respond to all my own social media inquiries. I want to have a connection with all of you, and I want to continue to build that. And I want to continue to build that full-time over the next maybe next decade or more.
Thank you. Lauren?
Well, everybody who knows me knows A, I work hard, and B, I am a night owl and I'm up early. So there isn't anybody who's ever said in my life that I'm not accessible. And I'm sure there's probably people, certainly from Sherborn, there's probably people in this room that are on the other end of phones and emails in that respect. I can tell you that when I was on our select board, what was really important was to recognize that our towns are they're different, but we all have very much similar issues and challenges. And so when I was on the select board, one of the things I did was we brought together other select boards to talk about those things. Because there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. If somebody else has already solved a problem, we can share a piece of DPW equipment that's not an emergency piece of equipment. We can figure out how to leverage each other's resources so that we can resource share. For example, 3 of our towns do not have a grant writer. And if you know about state government, the way that you get resources into your town, you have to write grants. Grant writing is both an art and a science. And if I have to have the great fortune to work on your behalf as your state rep, there's a couple of things I would do in this respect. One is I would look at regionalizing a professional grant writer. I've already actually interviewed one who's interested in that. Frankly, I think the state should be providing that resource. I can tell you that I've been told by many different departments, including Council on Aging, that it would be great if we had a central directory of all the grants that are available. A lot of times we don't even know. And the other thing I would do is I would make sure that we would really create a district. We have a new district, so why not get together and really bring that district together? So I would be a facilitator of regular meetings with the community, with officials, on a district basis, so that as we're facing these different challenges, we're sharing best practices and sharing information. That's how you work together, and that's how you're more efficient and smarter, and you're not trying to reinvent the wheel and somebody else has possibly solved the problem, or you can share resources together.
Thank you. James?
Sure. So first of all, I absolutely pledge to be present and available. I see this as a full-time job. It's the only way I can see doing it. People sometimes ask, do you see yourself as a Beacon Hill rep or as a local rep? And the answer is both. Because you need to understand what's happening at the local level to be an effective legislator on Beacon Hill. I pledge to continue to develop a deep understanding of the issues that impact Sherborn in conversations with your boards, with your leaders, to be your advocate, to be that person that can bring your issues to Beacon Hill on a regular basis. I think there's so many things happening now at the state level that have an impact on what's going on locally. I will be available. I already have my personal phone number and email on my cards. I'm happy to share that. Again, it's just one of those things that I think is important if you're going to serve the public to be available to them. I do think there are opportunities for collaboration. We're seeing the beginnings of that with some of the call centers that are being developed, some other things. A lot of the towns in this district are struggling with some similar issues, and it would be great to see some collaboration around it. I know there's no senior center here in Sherborn, and a couple other towns are considering things, so that might be an area for collaboration downstream.
Okay, so it's going to be James, Connor, and Lauren. What other bills that are before the legislature that will impact Sherborn, and what are your position on those bills?
Sure, so let me get, well, first, I'll give you two. First of all, I absolutely think that the way we deal with this surplus, we should be getting more local aid to the cities and towns. They did a little bit, but they could have done so much more. I would trust our local officials to appropriate those funds more than anybody else. I mean, they get more scrutiny. Anybody who's served in local government, as I have, there's tremendous scrutiny that goes on at the community level, which is a good thing. But let me give you another specific example, again, of how our small towns get treated. Some of you may hear about PFAS, forever chemicals that are affecting our water. This is a serious issue that's going to impact us. Setting aside why we went from 70 to 20 and became more strict in the state, we'll leave that alone for now. The way this state has dealt with it, again, I think has been inconsistent and inappropriate, right? They put the no regulations in a couple of years ago. The legislature just finished its task force, and funding won't be appropriated into 23, 24, 25. So you have towns in this district that are going to make major decisions about multi-million-dollar investments, and they don't know which path to take, because they're deciding which path to take, but they don't know how much money they're going to get from the state because the state's not telling them yet. I think that's inappropriate. I think there's got to be more cohesion and confluence between the regulators and the appropriators, and more of that needs to happen. Serious consequences in the whole district, especially for Millis, Hopkinton, and Sherborn, and we're keeping our fingers crossed in Holston, but I think it's going to affect them as well. And here with individual wells, it's going to be very complex. And knowing how much money the state is offering is going to be really important. This is one of those issues where I say we are a commonwealth. We're all in this together. Water is a community resource that we should all be working on together.
Connor?
I think that we definitely missed the mark in this last session when we were pushing really hard on trying to open up more gambling across the state, and we instead pushed aside anything that looked at tax credits and ways that we could actually support those in the communities directly. We didn't see any real financial aid that came down to people in the communities, especially to seniors who have been severely impacted by the current state of the economy right now. I think that is something that we need to realign on. We need to be looking at a people and community focused approach to this, rather than just looking at it from pure and simple sake of what's going to be the most expedient thing for us to get done, and what's going to be the best feather in our cap. I think, speaking from direct experience on it too, is, James is right, PFAS and those forever chemicals are an issue. Hopkinton is dealing with those right now, and the town is currently footing the bill for all of that. And it's wrong that we're having taxpayers have to deal with an issue that they didn't create, that they were stuck with. And even if we pass it up to the state, it's still going to just go ahead and increase our own tax bills. What we should really be doing is holding accountable the organizations, the companies that have actually put this into our water systems, and we should have them be remediating it. That would make it more able for us to look at things like making sure that your wells are, if they're impacted by PFAS or other contaminants that might have gotten into the water supply, that we can better address that, and we can find money that can pay for that, and pay for not just remediation of actually solving the well issues when it comes to finding the reverse osmosis filters when it comes to PFAS, but also looking at larger, some of the town water supplies that are currently buying massive filters that may or may not fully work. Thank you.
Can I just ask a procedural question? Are we going to be able to ask questions?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
In terms of, again, my colleagues make the point, it's been a one-voice legislature, and we, the taxpayers, are writing very big checks that we can't afford. And certainly people that are on fixed incomes, it doesn't matter which of the 4 towns in this district you come from, that's a universal frustration and challenge. We are more than 2 years behind in terms of our Chapter 90 road money. There's several reports indicating that. That money needs to be, that should have been unlocked. It should have been more important to do the people's business than to go away on vacation. That was universally stated across a myriad of media channels. And I would say that in terms of bringing money back into the communities, what I would want to see with, obviously the MBTA districting program is a mess, and it has to be, recalibrated. aid to cities and towns, which comes in many different bills that just got left on the table. That should have been done before. But I think clearly Sherborn and Millis right now are having this conversation about what can we do to do right by our seniors, the people like us who have been writing the checks for police and fire departments and libraries and roads. And you know, our Massachusetts School Building Authority has given towns, cities and towns across the state $15.9 billion in matching funds to build buildings. And on July 7th of this year, the State Library Association appropriated $50 million of library improvements to different libraries across the state. And if I was going to be your state rep, one of the first things I would look at is why not apply that matching fund formula to senior centers, the largest population in our state. Because where we're getting stuck is seniors' personal reluctance to increase their own taxes for themselves in the form of a senior center or community center with all of the appropriate features that they need to thrive. And I think that's something that needs to be changed, and I hope to do it.
Thank you. So we'll go Lauren, James, and Connor, and I'm making this question up because I'm going to ask for selfish reasons. But so I do want to thank Charlie Baker for approving the formula grant again this year. And as you know, seniors, towns get paid $12 per senior. And it looks like, you know, we're still waiting for the census numbers to go out. But as all of you know and have said, 25% of the population right now are 60 and over. And how do you, it appears that we'll get the $12 even as the census goes up. At first that was questionable. So I know in Sherborn our budget is 0.01 of the annual town budget. So how do you turn people, or how do you fight for seniors to get what we need and service them? I have, you know, over 1,000, quarter of the population, over 1,000 seniors we serve, and we have a full-time and 2 part-time people that serve all of those people as needs go up, and there's no transportation, et cetera, et cetera. So what would be your plans to help and get more financing for seniors, period?
My first.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm the private sector girl here, so I would say, first of all, you let the data do the talking. So the population numbers are what they are. You can compare and contrast the inflation that is the school budgets. Every year we all go to our town meetings and we wince and we go, wow, it's getting incredibly expensive to fund our schools. That's a whole other separate conversation. But I think you let the data do the talking. You have population numbers in your favor. I've spoken with the back-end services that when you're in a senior center and you want extra supports, people want to be able to live independently in their home and have choice about where they get their services from, and the fact that they can do it in their home. So you all work with Bay Path Springwell. Our town works with HESCO. There's a huge labor retention, as everybody knows. So what's happening is that sometimes you're probably calling, potentially wanting some support in your house, whether it's a home health aide, or you want some errands, or you need some transportation, and they can't fulfill that request. So what has to happen is we need to make the argument using the data in order to assert the need.
James?
So, some of you know my wife, Arena DeRosa, who runs the senior center in Westwood, used to be Holliston, and I have a sneaky suspicion that if I'm elected state rep, I'm going to be hearing about the formula grant at many occasions in the future. It's not enough, it never is. I think it needs to be raised. But the other thing is the formula grant comes too late in the year, and it's always a challenge for senior centers to plan the work that they have to do. So there's 2 things that are going on just around that one issue that we need to look at. I'm concerned about affordability for seniors. You know, there were some interesting things that didn't get through or still being worked on. Certainly upping the circuit breaker for senior citizens on their real estate taxes. I think we need to do that. I actually favored raising the cap on the estate tax. I think that's something I've heard from people as they think about passing on generational wealth. You know, homes have gotten very expensive in Massachusetts, and $1 million just isn't that much. I mean, it is for a lot of people, but when you look at the cost of real estate, it's a challenge. I just think that we know it's a growing part of the population. We have to service that community as best we can. When I worked at USDA, there was concerns about seniors who had to choose between food and medicine. And that happens, and there's hidden hunger that goes on, even in the communities that we all hope to serve. And it's surprising, but it happens. So I think there are a number of levels where we could be more supportive of the senior community, and also need to advocate around those issues on an ongoing basis.
Thank you. Connor?
Thank you. I agree entirely that, when it comes to dealing with the formula funding, both of my contemporaries here said exactly the right things on that and hit it on the head. I think when it comes to the circuit breaker as well, that's one thing that we can look at to better support seniors, and something where it adversely affects our communities that makes us a bit more unique than some others is that the circuit breaker doesn't have the same impact on those who have over an acre worth of land. And so then we also see that there are those in communities like ours where most of the plots are over an acre just based on the zoning alone. And we see less of a chance for those people to get the kind of tax benefits that we would hope all of our seniors can have access to. I think the other thing that we can really do, and I've pushed for this for a while, and I've pushed for it in Hopkinton as well, to increase public transportation accessibility. I think right now the biggest issue, and it's an issue with traffic, and it's an issue with trying to deal with the environment that we can address through expanded public transportation. We have seen that if we could have more accessibility and more funding towards it, then we'd be able to potentially offer reliable transportation and, first off, decrease some of the cars that we're seeing out on the street right behind us, but also just to see a chance to actually have more accessible transportation for seniors. I know that ever since we've expanded the Metro West Regional Transit Authority in Hopkinton, we've seen a lot of seniors shift to that and start using it more because it can get them to the grocery store, it can get them to the senior center, it can get them to the places that they really want to be in a given day, and it can get them there easily and reliably.
So I'm going to ask each of you to do your personal closing. We'll take a few questions, and then you're welcome then to mingle with the candidates and ask them questions as well. So Connor, you're up.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you so much to the Council on Aging for having us, and for Public Access for coming in and filming us so other people who didn't make it today could join us somewhat as well. I really want to impart to you all that I want to be a candidate for positive change going forward. I want to be an investment for you. I am in this for the long haul. I am going to put my all into it the same way that I've done in my current position. And I want to see the future of this district succeed because I don't have children yet. I just recently got married. And I would like to be able to have the future that I think all of us should enjoy. I want my parents to be able to age in place if they so choose. I want my grandparents to have the same option. And I think that it's the job of my generation to step up and make sure that all of us have the life that we deserve and all of us have what we've earned through the service we've given in our lives.
Laurie?
Again, thank you all for coming on a Friday in summer. It's really impressive. The reason that I'm here is because I deeply care and because I am a customer of the Commonwealth. I'm a taxpayer, and when I look to my government and they're not providing for me what they should provide for me, there's two options. There's three actually. One, I can become a keyboard warrior and complain, right? We all know those people on Facebook. They're totally annoying and they don't get involved, right? They complain, but they don't get involved. The second option is to just turn away and don't get involved. Don't vote. You're not those people, obviously, because you're here. And the third is to say, I can make a difference, and I am that person. I can make a difference. It's no secret that there are issues that are in front of our towns that are not easy. But if we don't have balance, if we don't have new people with new ideas who come at things from new perspectives, who are told, no, this can't happen, and make it happen, and who are really, really tight and protective of our checkbooks, we're just going to continue to see people leaving their towns. If you've ever sat in somebody's living room and had somebody who's lived in their town for 2 or 3 generations tell you that they think they're going to have to move, that their mortgage is paid off, one is a teacher, one is a husband and wife, teacher and a retired construction worker. And they said to me, I think we're going to have to move. And they've lived in this town, they're the 3rd generation. And it's heartbreaking, and it shouldn't have to happen. And when you hear a story like that and you say, I can make a difference, you step forward, or you get on the keyboard and you complain, or you forget the problem and you turn away. And I'm excited that there's so many people here on a Friday because you all are involved, and I want to be involved with you. You will never see anybody work harder than me, I promise, and there are a lot of people who will vouch for that. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you again for the opportunity. Thank you to the council, thank you to Cable, and thank all of you for coming this morning and spending some time with us. I think the question for the voters of this district, for the voters of Sherborn, is who is best prepared to serve the town of Sherborn. I've been an advocate my whole life. I have the experience at the local, state, and national level that I can make a big difference for this community. I have been a fighter. I've been someone who's challenged those in power at every step of the way in my career, and I will continue to do that if I am your state representative. Our campaign is going great. We have wonderful support from state organizations. I have the Mass teachers, the Mass nurses, I have the social workers, I have the AFL-CIO, I have the Sierra Club, I have Upper Charles River 350 Mass Action. They are all supporting my campaign because they believe in me. But more important to me is that I have the support of your friends and your neighbors, people like Marion Neutra and Jeff Waldron, who are enthusiastically endorsing my campaign for state representative, as well as many others in Sherborn, because they believe in what we offer. I ask for your support. I ask for your help. If you want to sign up to take a sign, we're here. Anything that you can do, meeting your neighbors, it all is part, it's step by step by step, meeting people one person at a time. Thank you all for the opportunity. It would be an honor to serve the residents of Sherborn in the years to come. Thank you very, very much.
I want to extend my thanks again to all of you for coming out on a Friday. At least it's not 100 degrees out, and I thank the candidates and Cable, but I especially want to thank the candidates for being respectful to each other and civil and a very pleasant conversation. So I applaud all of you for showing that. So we'll take a couple of questions. Louise?
My name is Louise Coleman. I've lived in Sherborn since 1992. Besides being involved in Democratic politics and being appreciative of everything in Sherborn, like the council on aging, I'm involved in peace and justice issues. Like one of the things I was thinking about as we were talking is the things that didn't get passed or didn't get considered in the last legislative session that I think really should have been is there was a bill in both the Senate and the House that got all the way through almost to the end of the process. It would have established a commission. It wouldn't have cost anything. The commission would study the effects of nuclear weapons on Massachusetts and on the effect that all those trillions of dollars that are going to the Pentagon instead of to the needs of education and medical care for people, all of those sorts of things. So that bill got almost to the end, and then the legislature spent the last, 2-3 days talking about sports betting instead of the when you read the news about Ukraine, that's one of the things that can happen. Is that happened in World War I. When there's somebody did an accident, something happened, and then it doesn't matter about anything else. So it was just really disappointing. And as much as I love so much of Massachusetts, it's just like it was just really disappointing that the legislators they just sort of ducked. So I'm supporting Connor because I know him since he was a little kid, and I think I admire everybody who's trying. But that it's just this experience really brought home to me the importance of having people in the legislature that listen, that are aware of what's important and what's sort of ephemeral.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are we going to answer the
Oh,
question?
yeah. I thought it was a statement or.
Well, I'd like to answer because you made a good point. You know, there's so many great bills that die at the end of the session. Unfortunately, our state ranks among the lowest in the country for openness and transparency. Right up there with Mississippi, Alabama, and Kentucky. It's kind of embarrassing for Massachusetts. I'm already on record as saying that I will fight for more transparency. I want to get work done. I'm not going to be a gadfly. But there are some things I think that we could do. What you mentioned sounds like common sense to me. We should never be afraid to study anything. And
Well, yeah,
I certainly worked on a lot of those issues around disarmament when I was at Peace Corps and in Oxfam, and they're really important. We spend trillions at the federal level.
Connor, do you have a?
Yes, so I agree with the same points as, you know, and I'm on the record in the same thing with the transparency aspect. I think, you know, I have the experience right now in municipal government where we have all these transparency requirements around open meeting law, public records, and none of those apply to the legislature. And we see passion points that will disappear in committee, and we see things that we care about that fade away to internal politics. And I think that to see that we really believe that we're representing the people, then what we discuss in our committees, I have no problem saying anything that I would say in a committee hearing to any of you in a one-on-one conversation. And so if you then hear that and don't agree with it, well then that's where it reflects at the ballot box. It's a pure way to make sure that people are held accountable, is to make sure that all of their actions while they serve you is open. I think that any kind of, I'm a big proponent of commissions. I think they give us the chance to really look at issues, look at impact issues at little to no cost, and find real ways that we can move forward on them. I think, unfortunately, sometimes the state shies away from them, and sometimes when we create commissions, they don't actually ever get anyone appointed to them. And then there's no follow-up when we see things disappear on it. That happened when we first launched early voting, and there was supposed to be an early voting commission that would study the impacts, would study how we would move forward and make it better. No one was ever appointed to that commission. It died and just went away. And so then all of the hope that a lot of us had to see as it would keep evolving and getting better just disappeared.
Thank you. Lauren?
I guess I would say, since my career is in communication, transparency is obviously important. There's a lot of state regulations, open meeting law and such, that require that. But if we're doing an effective job first as a district, just to galvanize our 4 towns, and we're doing a better job of connecting as communities, then we can identify what some of these important issues are that we want to bubble up to the State House, and then find the other people across the state who have like-minded issues. What you need is to be the squeaky wheel, right? So you have to identify where are the people of like-minded issues, and then bring them together. So that's something that I have a lot of experience with, and I would want to apply those skills, because I get frustrated when the information doesn't come back to us. When I find out, when I asked my mother, did you know that you could go to your Council on Aging for the following types of services, and she had no idea. I mean, why aren't we doing, you know, just like when you get your driver's license, or, you know, every November when we're all changing our batteries for our fire detectors, or, you know, we all get our AARP notifications, whether or not we want to admit that or not, and we've buried them for a time when they start to arrive. Why don't we get the menu that says, welcome to this new chapter in your life, and here are all the services that are provided by your local Council on Aging. We should be getting that type of program funded by the state to get everybody informed. And so that's the type of work that I know is needed, because there's too many people that don't know what is available and how to access those services.
Thank you. I think.
Hi, my name's Sterling Hayes, and one question, I wasn't sure Connor did his closing statement, so I wanted to ask that. But the other was a question is, this time last year, there was no redistricting. We didn't know that the current state rep was actually going to resign. So I want to know, on a Friday in August, this time last year, what would you guys be doing on a Friday morning? I love that.
Connor, did you not do your closing?
I did my closing statement.
Sorry.
It's
I'm
okay.
getting over a very severe concussion, so.
We don't need to get me talking too much, so I'll keep going if you let me. So thank goodness for that timer over there. So on a typical Friday morning, I am up early, taking the dog out, and then I am off to town hall to get things done. And you know, a typical, like even just right now, if I would say 2 years ago, it was getting ready for the exact primary that we're coming up on now, and getting early voting ready to launch for the next week or so, and endless ballots in the mail. But then it would be trying to, after closing up the office for the day, it would be going and making sure that all the ballots get delivered to the post office, ensuring then that I have the opportunity to get out to hopefully a local, you know, especially in the summer if weather's like this, you know, a concert or something down on the common or something like that, that I could go and have a chance to chat with some folks and some neighbors. And at the time I was walking to work, so I would have then just walked my way back from the office downtown back to my house, and hopefully I had a chance to see my wife if she wasn't working that day, but she's in the restaurant industry and it's Friday, so it's a good chance I wasn't going to see her. Probably I'm not going to see her tonight until she wakes me up when she gets home. But so my typical Friday would be working and then hopefully getting a chance to be out in the community.
James?
Yeah, sure. Great question, Darlene. I love it. I think for me, probably a combination. I think on a typical Friday, I'd probably be doing a variety of things. One is I think I'd be enjoying my garden more. You look at it now, there's lots of weeds in it, so I haven't been able to keep up with it. Probably enjoy my dog and also the Red Sox a little bit more, because it's very busy, as we all know, when you're involved in a campaign. But I also think that we were just coming out of COVID a year ago, and I had been doing some teaching, which I really enjoyed. As I mentioned, I taught in this room to the Sherborn seniors, and we were talking about other courses as well, but I think a lot of senior centers and groups were trying, you know, were they ready to do stuff publicly, were they not? It was a very difficult time for so many of us dealing with COVID, but I was involved in some explorations along that. And as you noted, we didn't know that we were going to have an open seat. We had outstanding representation, Carolyn Dykema and Dave Linsky, and my senator is Karen Spilka. I mean, I loved all the people who were representing me, Jim McGovern as well, and others. So the interesting thing is, I was working on some national stuff. I was helping to protect voting rights in the South, some of the issues that are going to impact our country, that are going to impact Massachusetts, depending on what happens in the votes in other parts of the country. So a little bit of everything. Certainly I've always been involved every year of my life and will continue to do so, regardless of how things transpire in the months ahead.
Thank you.
This is a great question. Take note, honey. I'm an early riser, so I get Henry, the golden retriever, right out of the gate, and so I'm up with him. I'm also a news junkie, so I'm somebody that's online, reading news, watching on TV, streaming, listening to podcasts, so I do a lot of news digesting. The nature of my work is to really know what is going on in the news, so I try and fortify that. And then I have a lot of irons in the fire, both adjunct faculty work, consulting work, and then the odyssey of running for public office. So I have a lot of control of my schedule because I'm self-employed, so I can really modulate my schedule, and basically what I've had the great fortune to do is turn off the other things and really be totally dedicated to this, and so I'm pretty busy with the campaign, and my weeds in my garden reflect that. But I think we're all in similar shape, so that's pretty much what's happening on a Friday. It's not very sexy stuff, I have to say.
I think the weeds
Thank you for answering. I was just like that all of you have dogs.
They're all dog lovers. So I'm gonna close it, and then you guys can feel free to stay, have something to eat, talk to the candidates, and ask your questions. And again, I thank you all for coming, and really appreciate your time.